Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're tuning in the program called What's Going On FlintTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program, and I'm very delighted, as always, to have you out there in the listenership and the viewership because we are a podcast program and you can both hear us and see us. We're not just like the radio stations that are limited. We want you to see our countenance and hold us to account. You can see who's bringing forth the information so you can see us in the community. If we are not doing the job we should be doing, then we can expect retribution from those that recognize us on the street. I want you to stay tuned to all the programs here at FlintTalkRadio.com, though, and I want you to think about helping us here to become a better studio by your critique of what we do here. And we are taking our commitment to the community very seriously. And this is my 7th year here at FlintTalkRadio.com, and I want to tell you that we had our 9th annual celebration of our Kemet Study Group, and that went really well. I had a fantastic speaker. Want to give Mr. Stacy Swimp a round of applause here verbally because he did a wonderful job as a keynote speaker. Had some excellent notes, made some good points. And it was just a really good program, very full program. And I think that everybody that was there had not only a good meal, but had a very nice time in terms of the conversations that ensued after we had had a very nice potluck dinner, which everybody brought their own dishes. And my job was to bring about 2 or 3 things, plus the annualized cake we have will be has our theme this year. We're still going forward, and next year will be 10 years. I don't know what we'll have as our slogan next year, but I'm sure it'll be we're still here, and a decade later, that those of you who thought we were going to go the way of the wind, we're still here, and we're still acting in the community, bringing some information, hopefully, that people can use, and it's open to the public. So those of you who have not joined us at this point at Pages Bookstore on 2nd Avenue, want you to do so, and feel free to come in anytime that you're available on the second Monday of each month the second Monday of each month from 5:30 into 7 o'clock. And we're going to be there for the long run because the ones who are there now with the Kemet Study Group, these are the kind of people that turn the lights out, and I don't think they're going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So I want you to be aware of what else we're doing. We don't just simply do things here at FlintTalkRadio.com, although that's a very important part of what we do. We're also on Facebook, where I post at least once a day, and then every once in a while I get inspired because of something that happens, and I post maybe 2 or 3 times on that particular day, given whatever the news events that are breaking, so we can have our little 5 cents out there on the public square, and we can hopefully generate some dialogue through that network. We don't do too much on Twitter, but because the Twitter kind of limits you, I think it's 40 characters, and we write when I write my articles, I'm writing like 2 and 3 pages, sometimes 4 and 5 pages on Facebook. I probably have the longest posts of anybody on Facebook, because I don't think too many persons write in the kind of volume that I write in. It takes me a while to just get to, as I get past the introduction, that's almost like a couple of paragraphs, just getting started into the things I want to talk about. And then by the time I get to page 2, before I know it, I'm at page 3 and 4, and then I'm still not finished. And sometimes what I'll do after I get through writing out what I want to say about a particular topic, I realize that I'm not even exhausted what I want to say about it. So then I put up the top, then go back to the top and put down there part 1. I did a 5-part series on one of the things that I did last month, and I still wasn't finished with it, but the month ended, and I couldn't justify taking it into I went into March. Then I'd be going through April, and that wouldn't work, so I had to end it because February is Black History Month, and then March is Women's History Month, and I didn't want to have that going into the other domains, so I had to cut it off and just have it as a 5-part series. Anyway, we're here today, and we're glad you're here, and hope you'll stay tuned for the next hour. We're going to talk a little bit about the Oscars award last night and some other things. But I came here, as you can see, I'm wearing my Eskimo hat, which is why I was wrestling with it at the very beginning of the show, trying to get the headphones to fit on my cap. And I'm wearing it to highlight the fact that we had more snow yesterday. I was out there again, shoveling some of Al Gore's global warming that's causing global cooling. And I'm sure if I dig down far enough, haven't done it yet, if I dig down far enough underneath the snow, I'll find what the warming is. I haven't found it yet. But I was out there again. I don't know how many times we have been out there shoveling snow in the city of Flint. But it has been more than a few in these last 3 or 4 weeks. And I mean, the snow on the side of the driveway is piled up to almost you can't even see over the snowbank. And that's because the snow hasn't melted. Then most snow comes on the way. And all this is because the vortex of the polar cap at the North Pole is warming and is pushing the cold air. The warm air, which is lighter, is pushing the heavy air downward, so that it's affecting us here at the Great Lakes region, and which is all of the Great Lakes are frozen. And I think they said that's the first time that's happened since 1976. But all of this warm air is calling all of this cold air. This is what the scientists are telling us. And John was telling me before we went on the air, he said that the person that was one of the founders in 1971, I think it was, he was in this organization called Greenpeace. Patrick Moore, one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, who left the organization in, I think, 1986. So it was founded in 1971. They stayed there to 1986, 15 years. And he could no longer tolerate the political activism of the group. And I was listening to him last week on Hannity, I think it was. I think Hannity had him on there Thursday of last week. And here's a person that really is an expert and an honest, objective climatologist. And he was saying that there is no scientific evidence that the globe is warming as caused by human behavior. So those of you who are, breathing in oxygen, O2, and because the body's foundation is carbon, you let out CO2, which is carbon dioxide. That is, if you're not like Terry McMillan waiting to exhale. And we're all 7 billion of us on the planet, we're all breathing. And that's carbon dioxide emissions, which we're being told is warming the planet. So I don't know what that means. Do we stop breathing or just stop having children so no more people can come on the planet and start breathing? Or do we plant more trees? Or do we in fact understand science and understand what Patrick Moore was talking about in the program last week, and that is that there's no scientific evidence of what these persons are talking about. And when they asked him, then why are they saying it if there's no scientific evidence? And he's making the point that you don't get any grants from the government in the scientific grants unless you are carrying out the rhetoric that is in fact being emitted from the politicians who are telling us that the globe is warming, and is warming whether you like it or not, and whether or not there's any scientific data that proves it's warming. And if you don't get on board with that, you're not getting any of this money they're putting out for quote-unquote studies of science. And so all of the participants, all the constituent members, some large numbers of them at least, have understood that the money is tied into your understanding that this is the rhetoric and this is what you have got to, in fact, abide by, or the funding that you're seeking to do any kind of scientific research, as if your conclusions at the end of the research are going to bear any different fruit than what is already being said. So I don't even know why you put the grants out there if all they're going to do is mimic what has already been stated. But if you want the grants, you've got to get on board. And he was saying that as the founder, one of the founders of Greenpeace, there's absolutely no scientific information that tells us and shows conclusively to a moral and scientific certainty that the globe is warming as a result of anything that human beings are in fact doing. And I did a 4-part series on Facebook about the whole global warming, global cooling, even global freezing analysis that was being put out by the same scientists up until 1981. And I went all the way back to 1895 to go back and just simply research what had been said at the dawn of the 19th century and at the beginning, at the ending point of the 19th century, and the dawn of the 20th century. What were they saying at that point? And from 1895 until 1979, they were fearful, according to the science, they were fearful of the globe freezing. And now, in 1979, they put skid marks on that, and in 81, they came out with the first analysis that contradicted what they've been saying for almost 100 years. And now we were told in 1981, 2 years after they had said the globe was in fact freezing, in 1981, they came out, put skid marks on that, and came out without any kind of chagrin and said that rather than the globe freezing, they made a mistake. The globe was in fact warming, and it went with global warming all these other years up until around 2004 or 2009. I think it's when Al Gore's movie came out, where he was making the claim in front of God and everybody else that the globe was warming after all, and we didn't stop all this carbon emission out of the industrial plants, or didn't stop this industrial advancement. We're going to, in fact, have the globe, burning up at some point, because the carbon emissions are causing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that's the reason why we're having all the turbulence in these different parts of the world, including the Philippines, where we had a tsunami over there, and the hurricanes we see over here. Of course, that's the argument that's passing for science. I think that a lot of people too believe. I think this is probably part of the problem, that people believe that when they look up there at the sky, I think they believe that they're looking at a larger version of the Houston Dome. How they build these football stadiums, and people don't want to be sitting in the stands freezing, so they put a dome over the stadiums now, and maybe in the baseball dome to keep the rain out. So they build these domes and put a cap on top of it, and I think people believe that when they look at the sky, that they believe that they have that sky is a dome. And therefore, that's the end of the atmosphere, in which the earth is part of that atmosphere that ends at the point of the sky. Now we know that the moon is 138,000 miles away from the earth at its longest distance, and its shortest distance 135,000. That's just in terms of the moon. And then there's a sun out there that's 93 million miles away approximately. And we think that would be the extent of it, but that's not true either. We are part of the Milky Way galaxy. And it is estimated, I want Gore to take some notes here if he will, be so kind as to write some of this down, so that the next movie that he makes, he won't have it as some unconventional truth, but have it as a consequential truth. I think his movie was called something about truth, but there was no truth in what he was putting out there. But if you take the Milky Way galaxy, which was given a name because it looks like out there the band around the galaxy would have a milky type of strand, more or less around it. I think it was found like 1610 by Galileo. And if you take the Milky Way galaxy, which the Earth is one part of that, and a very small part of it, and you understand how vast we're talking about in terms of the galactic world, you can see how ridiculous it is to say that human beings can actually change the world temperature in a vast global galactic system. How vast is it? You might ask, and that is that if we take science, and we're not talking about the science they're talking about, because what they're talking about is not science, they're talking about politics. If you take the science, and the science is that the speed of light travels at 186,000 miles per second, and you're trying to travel from Earth throughout the Milky Way. If you're going throughout this galaxy that's made up of, at a minimum, 100 billion stars, and some of the scientists estimate that we're talking about 400 billion stars and probably just as many planets. I mean, look at that. 100 billion stars at a minimum in the Milky Way galaxy, probably as many as 400 billion stars, and an estimate 1,000 to 4, let me get this right, 1 billion to 400 billion stars, and 100 billion to 400 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy also. Can you imagine how vast that is? And I had to think of how large it is, because when you look at you go and make your science class, we used to teach science in this country, and science was, when you talk about political science, that was in terms of social studies. Political science wasn't in the science classroom. That's where you had biology and physics and those kinds of things. Political science was a class that you had that was in the history department or the social studies department. You didn't have it as part of the science class. Science was a separate thing, and it wasn't supposed to be involved in any kind of politics. We didn't call that political science. We just called it science. It had different parts of it. But now science is political science. But when you get into the scientific aspect of it, then you look at the Milky Way and how vast it is. And that 100 billion stars, which is a minimum number, according to, if I remember what I was taught, even in my high school classes, reinforced when I went to the university. I think I'm right in saying this. In fact, I wouldn't say it unless I was absolutely convinced it was true of the numbers. And I'm saying that there are, according to the science that I was taught, that there are a minimum of 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And it might well be as many as 400 billion stars. And then a similar number of planets, 100 billion planets, or up to maybe 400 billion planets as well. Can you imagine how vast that would be? So it's beyond that sky that you're looking at there. And the sky is not a dome that blocks in any of the emission of this carbon dioxide that Al Gore is talking about. And if you take the speed of light, which we know is 186,000 miles per second, if you wanted to travel from Earth and go throughout the Milky Way with all that galactic space I just described to you, it would take you at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, it will take you 100,000 years to travel throughout the Milky Way. Look at that, 100,000 years it will take you to travel through the Milky Way galaxy, traveling at the speed of light of 186,000 miles per second. That's not per minute or per hour. That's 186,000 miles per second, because it takes between 5 to 8 minutes for the sun, which is 93 million miles away, to emit its rays to reach the Earth. That takes about between 5 to 8 minutes. And so we're talking science here, not this political science, which we have entered into another phase of science, where we're now putting politics into the scientific community, and we're getting these political conclusions made by these politicians. I asked a question today on my Facebook wall, and that was, if we can't trust the scientists to give us the right information about science, then what makes us think we can trust the politicians to give it to us? I mean, what do politicians do? And if you want to know what the politicians do, look at what the politicians did last week in Arizona. I mean, is anybody surprised that the governor of the great state of Arizona, which is always out in the forefront of other issues in the past and has paid an economic price for it? Remember when they had Dr. King's birthday nationalized in 1983, and then with the celebration started in 1986, well, Arizona said it was too expensive, and they weren't going to do it. And then, of course, all the entertainers, they couldn't perform over there anymore. They've got a habit of that now, because now they can't go into Florida and sell in the records because their feelings are hurt because Trayvon Martin was killed down there. Now they can't go in there and sing in the songs. I wish they would have the boycott of Michigan with some of that music they're putting out. But
I'd like to ask these, as celebrities are so upset about Trayvon Martin, I mean, it's a tragic situation either way. But what would their response been if George Zimmerman had been the one that was killed, and Trayvon Martin was maybe awaiting trial or walking scot-free? Would they give a damn about George Zimmerman?
It would be a justifiable homicide. They would have said that he was stalking Trayvon, and Trayvon was defending himself, and that would have been the end of the story. Case closed. And if you have a trial, it's because the society is still racist. And we'll get to that. We're going to get to some of that in terms of what happened last night at the Oscars, because that's the next part of our discussion this afternoon. But we got to get past some of the nonsense, because we've gotten into a dialogue right now that doesn't make any sense. And we are still talking as if we're back there in the Stone Age, which is Stone Age being back in the days of Bull Connor and George Wallace and Ross Barnett and Orville Fulvers and Sheriff Jim Clark and Ross Barnett of Mississippi and a whole host of others in their supporting cast. And we're not back there anymore. We have just moved beyond that point. But the science is not political science, or it shouldn't be political science. And if we can't trust the scientists to give us the right information, you can bet your last penny that we cannot trust the politicians to do it, because the politicians are, by their very definition, liars. They were talking, one of the person on Facebook was posting about Jan Brewer, Arizona, and I don't think anybody was surprised that Jan Brewer was going to veto the legislation that they had passed in the state legislature in Arizona. In fact, some of the ones that have voted for those Republicans that talk out of both sides of their mouth, most of them don't have any character and no principles, nothing they're willing to stand up on and say this is what we stand. And even the ones that voted for liberty in Arizona, that is to say that if you have a religious objection to doing something in a business that you own, because your religion prohibits you, or you could say that it causes a concern in terms of it having a contrast to what you believe your religion requires of you in order for you to be a practitioner of a particular religion. I mean, I don't think you should go into a Muslim restaurant and demand they sell you pork. And they were saying that if a person in, I guess, was in Arizona, where two persons wanted to get married of the same sex, and the proprietor of the business was saying that his religion speaks out against that. And now he's a bigot and homophobic, and he has to be punished because that's discriminatory conduct on his part. And don't we have liberty in this country? Of course, the business person doesn't have any rights. He has to, in fact, forego his rights and make sure that the rights of the other person is being protected. So the state legislature in Arizona passed a law in order to, in fact, deal with this void, this gap between that which protects the right of the proprietor and that which protects the right of the person that wants to purchase from the proprietor. And of course, the way you actually do that is you keep government out of it on both sides of the divide. That way you don't have any government coming in and having one policy where one size fits all, and therefore whatever one store does, the other one's required to do because government's got involved in it. But by them keeping their hands off of it, what you have there is that maybe one person has an objection to it. But right down the street, there's another person who doesn't object to it, who gets this guy's business, and that's therefore takes away from this other person getting away with it. There's a penalty involved in him taking that stand because he lost this person's business, but the person down the street gained his business, and so nobody actually loses. The person that was objecting that he wasn't being served over here, served down there, he gets his product that he wanted. Over here, this person has his liberty protected because he has a right on his own property to determine who it is he's going to serve. Now, nobody has an objection to that being applied as long as it doesn't have anything to do with this whole thing of political correctness. Because I see people having signs up all the time that say no shoes, no shirts, no service, and they don't say that in anybody's ear. They put it on the door. And if you don't have any shoes on and you don't wear a shirt and cover up your upper body, and you got to have shoes on your feet. You're not walking in a restaurant. I've not seen one where you can walk in the restaurant. At best, you better have on some flats, some of those beach shoes when you walk in there in the summertime, or some of those some loafers. But you got to have something on your feet. You're not gonna wear socks in there either. You got to have something hard or something that's intended to cover the feet, so that you're not walking on your foot. Or your sock is not touching the floor. I think that's a requirement. Your foot can't, you cannot have your foot on the floor without some hard casing that blocks it. So you can't even wear your socks in there without them telling you to get out. No one had a problem with that. But as soon as the proprietor said, I have a religious belief that I can't do that because my religion forbids it, then of course everybody got to come out with political correctness, and we can't have the Super Bowl in Arizona unless they change their mind. And of course, we knew what Jan Brewer was going to do, and she acted politically. I'm not criticizing what she did because I know that I knew ahead of time that was going to be the case. And she is a politician, so she acted politically. But she did not act upon the constitutional principles of a person having a right to his or her own property. And as you know, private property is the basis on which we have individual liberties in this country. And if you don't have private property rights, you don't have liberty. You cannot have liberty unless you have private property rights. And an owner has a right to determine who comes on his property and what they do once they get there. Now, those of you who say otherwise, because we gotten confused here by this ridiculous progressive these rulings by the Supreme Court, which that's not any longer any guarantee that the Constitution is going to be followed, because we have the court up there overseeing what's going on underneath the umbrella of the Constitution is in fact going to make sure that the Constitution is enforced. We don't see any evidence of that, including Obamacare, because that could not have happened if the court was doing due diligence and protecting the constitutional mandates. The government ought to be limited to the things that's allowed under Article 1, Section 8, and they've gone way beyond that. Probably 3/4 of what they're doing in Washington is unconstitutional, although it is not illegal because they made it legal. And one of the person was saying on Facebook he couldn't understand what the difference was. The difference is that nobody goes to jail because they pass a law saying that it's legal. But the question is not just is it legal. The question is also is it constitutional. And that's your job, John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, telling us that you shouldn't get involved in the fray whenever there's a dispute between what some office holder does and what the constituents want them to do. You say take that out of the ballot box. That's nonsense. Why do we have a judicial system if all you're going to do is use your hands to take the case and pass it back to the people that complain about it in the first place? You have an obligation to, in fact, oversee what the government is, in fact, doing to make sure that it follows the Constitution. Whether or not it's legal is only one part of it. The question is whether it's constitutional. I wish somebody would tell Holder that, because last week Holder was telling the attorney generals of the states that they don't even have to follow the laws in the state. If you disagree with the law, if you disagree with the law and you think it's wrong, now this is a man, not the court. This is a person that's in an elective office, and they go before the voters get elected. Now all of a sudden they got supreme wisdom. If they think that the law is in fact wrong, out of some superior wisdom they have because they get elected, then they can just simply refuse to follow the law. And this is the DOJ telling the attorney generals in the states that they don't have to follow the law if they feel that the law is unjust. Where are we? Where are we going? Can somebody tell me where we're going with that in this country? And Jonathan Turley from George Washington University. Now I respect Jonathan Turley, although he's a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, but at least the man's a scholar. And at least I can say that about him. The man's a scholar, and he went. And I give him credit for going before the Congress and saying that we had a tipping point, constitutional tipping point in the nation. He was wrong about that, but and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But he was wrong about that part. But at least I give the man credit for saying that, and that's what he said. This is what he said. He said that it's not only important that we in fact stop what is happening under the Obama administration. That's you too, Eric Holder, and what you're doing. He says it's important we stop this, and we do it also during this administration, because what he was saying there is that if it's not stopped during the Obama administration, it stands in the aftermath of this man leaving office. Knock on wood, that'll happen on the 20th of January 2017. Everybody help me knock on some wood out there. Make sure that date doesn't change. We got to get this man out of there. But Turley was saying that it hasn't happened under this administration right here, and I think he was speaking to and up to and including the impeachment process that's allowed for in Article 2, Section 4, which I'm going to try to quote this from memory. And if I make a mistake, John's got his Constitution out there, but I'm going to quote it from memory, and I'm not going to make a mistake in it. This is Article 2, Section 4. And I wish Congress could go and read this and then hold the president to account, because if he doesn't back down from some of the stuff he's doing, he's got to be taken to the woodshed allowed for under the Constitution. But it says in Article 2, Section 4, it says the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. That's perfectly quoted. And the president is held to account by the Constitution. You can't just go out there and decide, as he said in a State of the Union address, that if Congress doesn't act, he'll act. Meaning that he will use his pen and his phone. I think the president has what kind of phone does the president have? Whatever phone he has, smartphone or whatever, one iPhone, he's going to use it to go around the Constitution. That's what he was actually saying. And I couldn't believe that up there that people he was actually taking power, saying he's going to take power from, was up there standing on one side of the aisle, cheering the president, saying that I'm not going to respect your right to, in fact, make the decisions allowed for in the Constitution in Article 1, then in Article 2, he's going to take that authority, which is the executive creation, the executive branch being created. He's going to take the authority of the executive branch and take that which was allowed in Article 1, take that over there into the second article also. And they up there cheering, yay! I couldn't believe the president was saying that, and they up there cheering it. Well, Turley was wrong in one respect. He said that we're at a constitutional tipping point. I don't know where he's been. I respect his testimony before the Congress. But I quite frankly don't know where Jonathan Turley has been. The fact of the matter is that Thomas DiLorenzo is writing a book called Who Killed the Constitution? The Constitution has already been overthrown in the United States. I know that may shock you, but that's just the way it is. The Constitution does not apply. And those of us, in fact, one mistake that I was making, I say this in one of my posts, one of the mistakes that I was making was that I was looking down the road trying to see if we keep going down this road, this pathway we're going down, at what cliff, north, south, east, or west, at what cliff do we go over in the 4 different directions we can go down that road, and either the 4 directions is going to arrive at some cliff in one of those directions, and where are we heading? And what I didn't understand as I was looking into the future, trying to see where we're heading, I did not understand at that time that I was unconsciously transferring my focus and my attention away from where we are right now. I was asking the question, where are we going? I should have been asking, where are we at the present point? And when I began to look back at that question, the conclusion that I drew, and had to draw based upon what I was actually seeing, now that I'm looking at the present, was that we've already arrived where I thought we were heading. We're already there. The Constitution's already been overthrown in the United States. And that's why Holder is standing up there telling us, telling the Attorney Generals that they can do what they want to do. Because that's what he's doing, is what he wants to do. And when this man leaves office, and I heard that his time slot is somewhere this year, so it means, and I would assume, and I don't know if he'll leave before 2014 election is over in November, probably somewhere after the election is over, but the sooner the better. And when he leaves, and then we're throwing some folks out, maybe we can begin to kind of make a turn in the course of events in the United States, if it's not too late to do this. But we've got to stop this train from going down this road, because we are heading toward a disaster. And we are heading toward a disaster both politically, economically, socially, morally, spiritually, and otherwise. Because I don't know of anything that you can point to and say this is one of the positive that this plays out, and as it's going right now, and this plays out down the road, then we'll have this outcome that will in fact put skid marks on the country's deterioration. I don't know. I don't even know what the positives are that we can say that is going to be the case, and we just simply will do more of this. More of what? And I was making this point also that I don't think that, some of the people writing on Facebook were saying that in Arizona that the money ruled the day. I don't see it that way. First of all, there's no money. I mean, what they're printing in Washington, that's not money. That's paper, counterfeit paper that they're printing. And it's only a matter of time before they had to put that printing mill up. The printing press got to stop churning, and you're going to find out how bad things are once they stop printing that paper and throwing it out here. That's not worth anything. And what that's going to do to the stock market when it catches up with the fact that its prostitution days are over, because all the stock market is just one big prostitute that takes money from any source. It didn't care if it comes out of here or somewhere else. All it does is just gorge on the paper that's thrown into it. It doesn't care. But once that paper stops, because the printing press stops, because it's not based upon any kind of production that's going on, They've shut production down in this country. Once they stop printing money and stop borrowing from the rest of the world, we're going to see how bad things are in the United States. I don't agree that money was what caused the governor's veto. Although I do know that they were threatening, the Super Bowl was threatening that if they don't have this this bill not signed into law, if they don't have the governor veto this bill, then they're going to pull a Super Bowl out of Arizona in 2015. And Lord knows they've already had enough of that kind of pulling out of businesses out of Arizona, because they paid a price for the Martin Luther King stand, which made them change their mind. When Steve Wonder got out there and said he's not going to sing anymore in Arizona, and conventions were saying they're going to close their conventions to the state. I'm not going to have them there anymore, and all of the money that was going on, Chamber of Commerce, of course, gets involved, and politicians got to deal with the business community, which is being hurt by these politicians. So they backed down and went along with it. So I had no doubt that Jan Brewer, who is a governor that I have a lot of respect for, was going to, in fact, veto that bill. But money wasn't the reason why what caused it. Political correctness caused it. And money was a sledgehammer that was used as political correctness stepchild. In other words, political correctness was a driving force. And if you don't think it was political correctness that was a driving force, but money was the money had a hammer. And the hammer was, in fact, the conventions and things like that. But what really caused it was political correctness. And that was proven by one of the pictures they had. It's very funny, but it made a point, where they had two persons. John, did you see this one? They had on one of the walls, they had two Klansmen in a Klan rally.
Yeah, showing up in that black person's bakery. We want you to make our wedding cake. Yeah, I mean, if they would did that, would the liberals be all over the fact that the black bakery? We'd probably turn these guys down. That's fine.
That made a point.
They can be discriminatory, but nobody else can be. Or
and no conventions would be pulled out of there, because political correctness would be that you have every right not to serve the Klan, give them a cake, and they want to get married, because that's unreasonable. Or go to the Jewish business and ask him to make you a cake with a swastika on a symbol on the cake. I don't think people would go along with that. But see, it's not the money is not the money is the symptom. It's a symptom of what the real driving force was. The driving force is political correctness, and that's why no one has a problem with the sign that says no. If you don't have a shirt and don't have any shoes, then you're not going to have any service. The man can determine that all day long. Nobody's going to pull a convention out. Nobody's going to threaten to pull a Super Bowl out and carry it somewhere else. And nobody's going to actually have a problem with that. And they don't have a problem with blacks not selling a cake to the Klan. It could be two men want to get married, two women want to get married, and that's not going to have any effect. Okay, well, that leads me into what I want to talk about lastly then in the program, because I said I was going to talk about three different things here. And that was the climate was the first thing, which is why I'm wearing my hat. And I can tell you right now that you can continue to inhale and exhale. You're not going to cause any emissions that we can't deal with. The globe is not going to be blocked by the dome up here. That blue sky is not going to block it from going out into the atmosphere. They're so vast that you couldn't go across that in 100,000 years, traveling the speed of light. Take you 100,000 years across the vast place of the Milky Way. Now, I don't know where Al Gore got the idea that just simply the blue sky that stops up there, and then look what we got to deal with up here. That's space up there. And I want you to look at a map sometimes, intergalactic map, and look at where the Earth is and all the planets. They say we're going to go up here. All the planets in the air. There's no. It looks like we're down here and we're looking up that way. All the planets out there, and they're held in place by a gravitational pull. I mean, I learned that in 8th grade. They ain't teaching that in 8th grade right now because they're trying to teach people how to put a condom on a cucumber. But back in the day when I went to school, they taught, science. They taught it in the science department. Then they went over to the other class and They taught political science over here in this other class. They didn't have the political science in the science class, which is what they're doing right now. But that takes me into our next point of departure here, and that is the Academy Awards last night. Now, I have to tell you something. I didn't watch it because I just cannot stand to hear people that sound like Al Gore up there getting their awards. Al Gore got an award for making his film on global warming. And now I got to listen to these people get up there and line about their awards and making all these silly speeches. So but I said last night to about 2 o'clock, I was waiting for the internet to put on the internet those who had won the awards from Mr. Oscar. I guess it's a person named Oscar. It's called the Oscars. And I'm assuming that that's somebody's name. I don't think the person would just come up and it's not named after, it's not called the George Award. Make that Mr. George, please, if it's named after me. But the Oscars, 2014 Oscars. And I already knew that the fix was in. Really, when I heard, and then today I heard Ellen, what's her name? Ellen DeGeneres. When I heard her say at the beginning of the program, as they were replaying some of the things that occurred last night, and she was saying that one, in terms of the best picture, one or two things will occur. One is that either the film called 12 Years a Slave will win, or Everybody's a Racist. And I had already predicted that when I saw that The Butler didn't have a single nomination, that told me all I need to know. In other words, if they had not given, here's what would happen last night. I don't think anybody said this so far. If they had not intended to give 12 Years a Slave an award, they would have had more black films nominated. The mere fact, and this is the first time it's said anywhere in the media, said here first, the mere fact that The Butler did not get a single nomination is an indication right there of the fact that the film 12 Years a Slave was going to get an award. And in fact, more than one. It got 3 awards. Now, you have to be awfully naive if you think, and I went, now look, folks. I don't go to a lot of movies, but I try to go to the ones that I think, will have some recognition at the end of the season, and they're now getting ready to give the awards. I want to have some idea of some of the films out there. I went to see Captain Phillips. I saw that one, starring Tom Hanks. I saw 12 Years a Slave. I saw that film also. And I saw Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock. Now, I didn't see the rest of them. Now, the rest of them that were nominated, let me read these are nominations. 12 Years a Slave, American Hustle, Gravity, The Wolf of Wall Street, Dallas Buyers Club, Her, Nebraska, Philomena, and Captain Phillips. Now, of those numbers, there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I saw 1/3 of them. Because I saw Gravity, I saw Captain Phillips, and I saw 12 Years a Slave. And I have to tell you something. 12 Years a Slave got 3 awards. Best Picture. Now, if you saw Captain Phillips, and I didn't see all 9, I saw 3 of them. If you saw Captain Phillips and you saw Gravity, I know it was a remake of what some are calling, outer space. I mean, it was out there, floating around. I mean, we've seen this movie before. But that was a well-made movie. Very well-made movie. And very suspenseful. It kept you on the end of your seat. You were on pins and needles throughout that film. That guy kept your attention the whole time. Where in 12 Years a Slave, because I already knew the story because I read the book, but you were not so much on edge. You kind of knew at the end he's going to be reunited. He's only 12 years a slave, so at some point he's going to be reunited with his family. And at the end of the film, once he got back home to his family. He's and family standing around the mantelpiece. This is what really got me in that film. At the end of it was that this man had been gone from his family 12 years, had been kidnapped, and he walks in the room where his family is at. They didn't know he was coming. And he walks in the room, his family is all there, and the camera starts scanning the room. There's a person over there, a male, standing next to a woman. And the question you're supposed to ask in the audience is that the man's wife got married again? No, that's his son-in-law. And that's his daughter got married. They now have a family. He scans over here, and there's another person over there. That's the male child. That's his son, a little bit older now, 12 years older. Over here is a woman standing over there by the mantelpiece. And nobody, this man been gone 12 years, now don't forget that. This man is gone 12 years, and nobody runs over there. His wife stands there by the mantelpiece, and she doesn't even move. I mean, she's just sitting there. I mean, there's no emotion there or any of that. They're going to tell me that's a great film. I mean, if I'm gone 12 years and I'm married, and if I'm married and I have a person standing by the mantelpiece, I've been gone 12 years because they kidnapped me, and I return, and she's standing there wondering, what I came back for. I don't think I'm too happy with that. I could be wrong. But I mean, it was ridiculous. But that film got the best picture. And then, if that's not enough politics, here's something else that was predictable. Lupita Nyong'o, I think it's the way she pronounced her name, from Uganda. Now get this. The best supporting actress, and this woman had never been in a film before. They got all these actresses with all this experience. This woman has never made a Hollywood, of course they don't make them in Hollywood anymore, but let's say it's a Hollywood film, never made a Hollywood film before in the history of Uganda. And this woman all of a sudden is the best supporting actress in the universe. I mean, can we get real here? And of course, you probably know that this was 50 years after Sidney Poitier got an Academy Award as the first black male actor getting an Academy Award for a film that didn't make any sense, called Lilies of the Field, that he made in 1964. That film was terrible. Even he says it was terrible. But it was about time, and so they gave him, I mean, you didn't get anything for A Raisin in the Sun, which was the best acting job that Poitier has ever done. There's nothing that required more dramatic flair than that film, the character he played there when he played the film of the son of the man who died because the insurance policy came because his man had died, and they built the film around that insurance policy. And he was playing Walter Lee Younger in that film, and he was dynamic in that role. I don't think I've seen him in a role that way he played any better than that in that film. That film is a classic, and it has so many different tosses and turns in it that goes back to the Harlem Renaissance and things like that. It gives you a lot of different avenues going to be able to teach about something that's fundamentally important in history. And Raising the Sun, that's Langston Hughes, and the fact that we have the black family moving into the community and being asked to leave out of the community, that's Martin Luther King. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with that to be able to use as a grounding point and a stepping off point to be able to teach some historical facts. But Poitier was brilliant in that film. He didn't get an award for it. It came out in 1961. But it was about time, and so 3 years later, he plays the character saving these nuns and hipping them with the church and all that, and nice guy. Then nobody got shot. Nobody was carrying a switchblade. And so Poitier gets an award. Even he says that film was that the role he played was not one of his best. But it's about time, so they gave him an award, and he becomes the best actor that particular year. And then we got to give, now we got to build up on that. Before we get to 12 Years a Slave, we got to build up on that. We can't just have Portier out there by himself. He's out there as the best supporting actor, and we got to give him some dap now. So a couple of years back, I forget what year this was, about 4 or 5 years ago, when it could be a little bit longer than that, but when they made the film called Training Day, starring Denzel Washington, and it made Monsters Ball, a role that Angela Bassett turned down because it was something that was demeaning to her, but was demeaning to Halle Berry. She played the cat or a woman where she was constantly bending over so you could see that she was ripped in all dimensions. And so they had this little tight thing on, they had the mask on, as if we watching anything she's wearing up on her head. And she played that role, so we knew if you offer a role, no matter what it is, Halle Berry is down with that. So she was given, after Angela Bassett turned it down, said the role demeans her. Then they offered it to Halle Berry, and Halle Berry took the role. And then to penalize Angela Bassett for having the nerve to say this is demeaning, they decided that it's time now to give another award out, and we got to balance this stuff out because Hattie McDaniels had gotten one for playing a maid, and that made everybody mad because here this woman was playing a role in Gone with the Wind and what is this, Aunt Jemima, and we can't have that. And then Portier gets one for playing this really too nice guy and so on and so forth. This is 3 years. This is 3 years before he was talking about marrying somebody's daughter and guess who's coming to dinner. So he wasn't doing none of that. So they give him an award in '64. But 50 years later, we coming down to the 2014. But before getting here, we had to even this stuff out. We got Hattie McDaniels playing Aunt Jemima, and we got Portier playing the guy that is so nice you want to get on the screen and kiss him and hug him and for an hour and a half till the film goes off, helping these nuns out. How nice can you get? Hey, carry no switchblade. This is not in Harlem. And what in the world are we doing here? So Portier gets an award. But then we got McDaniels over here and we got Portier. He didn't have that. So they make the film Training Day where Denzel Washington is playing a guy that is a police officer. He's training this other guy. He's corrupt as he can be, and he's playing this mean-spirited guy. So we got Portier, the good guy. We now got to balance that out, and that's Denzel Washington playing the mean guy. He gets an award. Denzel's a great actor. He gets an award. Now, forget Samuel Lee Jackson. Nothing. You're not handsome enough. So they gave him an award. But then Halle Berry's been nominated also. Now, I knew the fix was in when they brought Portier out there. Portier comes out, and he's the one that's going to introduce and talk about how much progress they made. After all, look at this. I got an award, and now there are 2 blacks being honored tonight, and that's this woman and this man, and these guys are both getting an award the same night. Look how much progress has been made. And that's what this guy named Steve McQueen, not to be mixed up with the guy played in the film on TV, one of my favorite westerns called Wanted Dead or Alive. Not him. He's deceased now, unfortunately. Great actor. But this guy comes from Amsterdam. He comes over here to make a film about something he doesn't know anything about over there, because they didn't have not one slave taken to the Netherlands. He comes over here to make a film and talk about the slavery over here, and he then promotes, it's about time that y'all did something else, and begins to promote it that way. So 50 years after Portier, to the very year of 50 years, we now got to have another milestone. And now they open it up, and then all these awards coming out. The first adaptation of a book got that award. Best actor, best film, and best supporting actress. And this woman hadn't even played in a movie before, and she gets the best supporting actress, better than some of the ones been out there plying the trade all over a lifetime. Okay, we got to get real on a lot of different fronts in this country. We got to get our politics together. We got to get Hollywood together. And when we have time, and we take some time out of our busy schedules and begin to pay attention to what's going on in the world we got to inherit and pass on to our children, maybe we'll be able to get this thing together. And we certainly hope to do so around November the 14th when we get ready to go to the polls, somewhere around there, to get these persons to understand they're going to have to yield. Until next week, I want you to do what we always say here at the studio and want you to follow your dream. Because if you do not follow your dream, you will absolutely, positively never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.